Guy was a 40-year resident. He said he'd never seen the amount per week of cancer that he's seen since post 9/11.
Okay, and that makes sense because
makes absolute sense. The wild shit is though
they're not taking care of these guys.
They're not taking care of them. But the wild shit to me is that personally, these 9/11 guys are like, don't forget about us. You can't forget us. And there's always some white person saying you can't forget us. And there is no color on first responders. But whenever it comes down to you got to solidify it to the black and Latino community about what we won't forget. We're supposed to be passive about shit. We're supposed to forget about things. We're supposed to get over things. You talking about 15 years later, don't forget about us. I mean, like, I found that ironic. And it's the same social. The thing I find problematic is much of the same social economic group that are for the first responders are also against a sentiment that my man Cap would express.
And I'm glad you said that. So this is what I got to say about I tilt my hat to Colin Kaepernick. I think what he did was very courageous. I think what he did was definitely a long time coming. You know what I'm saying?
But we do this all the time. I mean, the Olympics, 70s, 60s, we do this.
Yeah, but it's been a long time coming since you had these athletes to really go out their way and speak on these injustices. And when he did it, it's like, okay, now it's starting to catch a little wildfire.
For the millennials.
Yeah, you're starting to see, it's starting to open a lot of people's eyes up. And now, he said, I'm not disrespecting the veterans, the first responders. The first responders,
and neither am I. And I think that's important to get across.
But when you start looking at the science behind the national anthem, right, with this guy who wrote this anthem, who actually wanted slaves to continue to be slaves, and you know, whatever the case may be, once you do the history, you'll find this out. But it's surprising to me that nobody ain't tied in and look at him as a bigger hero on the strength that he's not the one that disrespecting first responders and veterans or people that's active in the military. Our actual government,
oh my God,
is the ones that's actually disrespecting.
Greatest perpetrators.
Exactly. They sending you across seas under false pretenses to fight unjust wars, and then when you come home, you have to sit outside with a cup in your hand and collect change in front of liquor stores, in front of libraries. You sleeping at the train station, but this is the same government that said, "Listen, we're gonna go and fight Obama. We're gonna go over there and fight." I mean, what his name was? Saddam Hussein.
Name one. We're gonna fight Saddam. We're gonna fight
Osama bin Laden.
We're gonna fight
all these people. Gaddafi. You know what I'm saying? But then when you come home after you fought in these unjust wars, you come home and you got a cup in your hand and you asking for change. You know what I'm saying? You seen it, right? When you and then on the strength of that, when 9/11 happened, this is why I'm tied into 9/11. Instead of you blaming Kaepernick for not standing up, you should be blaming your government on why they didn't investigate further or do a thorough investigation, or even willing to reopen an investigation for the 9/11 travesty, to see that our own government, well, obviously they don't want to do it because it was our own government that did it. So but you gotta say, well, these are the real perpetrators of crimes against humanity on a large scale of things.
I'm gonna say this, and I mean no disrespect, but there are social economic mentalities that exist within this country, in every country. And the blue collar, as hard working as we are, of which I am a member of,
myself also.
Yeah, you know, I'm a construction guy, but not really, but it's what pays my bills. There is a certain socio-economic mentality that goes with somebody's socio-economic bracket. So, like, I say that to say, like, one thing I noticed when Cap was like not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, You know, I heard statements by the police department of the state for which he is a team member of. What team is he a member of? No,
He's 79ers. You need it. I don't.
What is he? What the fuck is a 79ers? Cali
49ers.
49ers. Okay.
The gold trade.
San Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco. Gold trade.
So I heard these LA cops, and we know they're some of the most racist in the world. We know this. Talking about, but we're not going to secure any events that he's playing at anymore because,
like, do you even have an option? I thought y'all was in use.
Yeah, I thought
y'all had to.
Yeah, I thought y'all was civil service.
Like how, when, and this show you the bullshit. This show you the bullshit where you have an option to protect and serve. So also, so on likewise and on the other side of the coin, you have the choice to be the juror, the executioner, when you so choose to. And this is why we're starting to see so many black men getting executed by police before they even have a hearing.
Well, I'm glad you said that because that goes directly to what I was hearing in this class I took last week in New York about in New York State. It was a personal police class.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? They're talking about in New York State, a civilian, when interacting with an officer, does not have freedom of speech.
Okay.
In New York State.
And it appears that way.
So
automatically, like I said earlier,
if
the Miranda.
Yeah, out the door. If you think
already once you become in contact with them, that's automatic.
It's that, and you gotta recite it to yourself.
Yeah. Exactly.
You gotta tell it to yourself. Because as soon as they say, "Well, I saw you do this or do that," and, you know, you could have been minding your business chewing gum. As soon as you say something that is the antithesis to what they're saying, you're resisting arrest.
Yeah, exactly.
Now they can fuck around and put you down.
Okay. And that's crazy.
That's wild.
Especially in a country where they say that the land of the free, the home of the brave.
Yeah, they'll put you down. That's resisting arrest, bro.
And I'm supposed to respect that. I'm supposed to honor that. I'm supposed to be one with that.
But I will say on the flip side to our folks though, knowledge is power. So how do we handle when innocent, and I stress when innocent, how do we handle being wrongfully accused by someone in uniform with a firearm and all that? How do we then handle how do we handle that confrontation and live through it?
Well, the only thing that I've seen so far is that even when we are registered to have a gun, now we talked about this months ago, like probably a year ago, when I used to say to you, you know, we keep seeing these police shooters, so and so had a gun, we thought he had a gun, but instead of the police assuming, they never assume that a black guy has a permit for this gun.
True.
They always just say, well, this black guy had a gun, and we gotta take him down.
Gotta put him down.
They never ask, well, do you have a permit for this license, sir?
Well, why do you think that is?
Because in America, through white supremacy, black men are supposed to be, to use your word, docile.
Which one do you like more?
I fuck with Henry. Docile, right? And we're supposed to be servile, humble, scratching our heads, tap dancing and stepping and fetching. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah, I did.
And so, when you see ourselves encountering these police, automatically, and it's not necessarily the police fault altogether. It is through some of their training and their hierarchies.
Some of their training and lack of their own.
But also, you gotta understand, these white folks go through an indoctrination themselves.
Yes, they do.
Of white supremacy. So they are being taught automatically. When you see on the news every time, for the last 10, 15, 30 years, that when a black man has a gun, it's illegal. He shouldn't have had a gun. He was illegal. He's an ex-felon. So automatically, when you do see a black man with a gun, you're going to automatically assume that he's a felon, that he's carrying his gun illegal, and you're going to do what you need to do to take him down.
Listen, I always like to be one to get down to the brass tacks of the situation. And the brass tacks of the situation of black and brown people in this country is that in the Constitution, we are still 3/5 of a human being. It has never been amended, it has never been corrected. I don't give a fuck how many Obama we have. That part is still the narrative in this whole country. In 2016, we don't have to. You don't have to convince anyone that's not a part of the Pan-African diaspora that we're the bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a
that's
given.
not a part of it.
It's a given.
Yeah, it's a given.
It's a given.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
to where they're given what dolls to play with. You know, we've seen these studies.
We've seen these studies.
We've seen
going
these
into
studies.
Brown
Yeah.
versus Board of
Brown
Education.
versus Wade.
What was
Brown
my man's
versus
name?
Wade, or what
Yeah,
happened?
Brown versus Wade. Brown versus the Board of Education with Dr. Keith.
Yes.
Who said,
Brown versus
you know,
Wade.
he did these studies with these
And
young
what was
black
it versus
girls.
Wade? That was a different thing.
Yeah, that's Roe v. versus Wade,
Yeah,
the
that's
abortion
right.
shit.
But we saw Brown versus the Board of Education. Like this is what that is. This is the underlining ideal. So that brown and black is bad, and that's it in the Constitution. That which is legally binding.
Now, I want to segue into this governor McLeod, LePage, where he said that the enemies of the community were black and brown people.
Now, what community?
This is he was talking about. He's the governor of Maine, but
it's a lot of crackers in Maine. It's mostly crackers.
So what? So when you see that or hear that, what does that tell you? The enemy of crackers? Are you saying that the enemy of crackers
he's saying
is the black
something,
and brown man?
well, that's exactly what he's saying.
That's what
he's saying. The enemy of the white community is black and brown people. But here's where...
And that we rape their women.
But here's where statistics...
Have these babies.
Now here's my devil's advocate shit. Here's where our statistics and numbers...
We started going into
don't
genocide.
do our... Yeah, here's where our...
They said we was committing genocide by having babies with their women and wiping them out of the planet.
Hey, listen, a lot of...
Which is true. That was probably the truest part that he acknowledged.
They can't, like, once you're anything less than within the...